Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of the Squared Circle News Network. As always, I'm your host, Darren Patrick, and as always, thank you so much for joining me here today. And as long as you're here, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Give me a click on the thumbs up for a like. Don't forget to hit that bell for notifications for every time I upload new content. And being that this is episode number 10, I consider this a minor milestone, so it's time for a minor celebration. That's it. As we get into bigger episodes, bigger milestones, the celebrations will get a little bit more extravagant, but we kept it simple this time. Today is, of course, Double or Nothing weekend. Saturday, we're starting the weekend. Last night was the go-home show for Dynamite. Tonight, we have the countdown to Double or Nothing on TNT. And tomorrow, of course, the pay-per-view takes place starting at 8 p.m., the buy-in being at 7 p.m. But as always, we're going to start this episode with a little bit of WWE news. And I want to talk about something that Dave Meltzer reported on the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and a recent edition of the newsletter. He talked about a deal that WWE is allegedly working towards to have a working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I have to tell you, this does not surprise me, because now that the Forbidden Door is open, Tony Khan did all the legwork, made this happen. Everybody can see that the fans are anticipating something bigger and looking forward to these cross-promotion matches and possible supercards. Now Vince McMahon wants a piece of the puzzle. Here's the problem. If Vince McMahon were to establish a contractual working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, there is absolutely no doubt that he would not allow New Japan to have a working relationship with any other major organization. Probably any organization at all, but certainly not Impact or AEW or Ring of Honor. So, this is something I cannot see New Japan working towards or agreeing to. Another thing Vince McMahon I can't see allowing would be his performers getting the short end of the stick or being on the losing end of major matches within any sort of cross promotion with anybody. And it's just, I can't see New Japan agreeing to that either, being as they have, as good as the WWE's roster is and as good as their talent is, and believe me, whatever my feelings toward WWE are, they have some of the greatest talent in the world. But New Japan is a completely different level. I've said this a million times, in their in-ring product, how they work, the matches they put on, the strong style. WWE can't compete with that with their current product, and it just wouldn't be believable. And I can't see New Japan ever agreeing. Of course, they're not gonna. New Japan isn't gonna be so arrogant on the flip side of it and insist on having the winning end of every match. But the way New Japan works its product is they make all their performers look strong. You watch a New Japan match, clearly there's going to be a winner, clearly there's going to be a loser, but each individual gets their fair share of offense in. They're made to look completely competitive against the person they're wrestling against. And it comes down to the wire in every match. You never know who is going to win or lose a New Japan match. I mean, sometimes in title situations, it feels obvious when someone just wins a title that they're going to retain for a while and not drop it within the first couple matches, although that wasn't the case with Kota Ibushi, but I make that the exception to the norm. But when you watch a New Japan match, I mean, I've seen Kenny Omega, who went in his tenure in New Japan, he was absolutely the top guy in New Japan, and he lost to Toru Yano, who in New Japan's stable of wrestlers, Yano is considered a comedy wrestler, and I get that. But the difference being, even a comedy wrestler like Yano is made to look strong. And why not? Why not? It's kind of very similar to what AEW is doing with Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy beat Chris Jericho 2 out of 3 matches. Orange Cassidy is challenging in a 3-way match for the World Championship this weekend, and it's believable Because as much as you like to laugh at his antics, his King of Slaw style, Orange Cassidy is believable when he flips the switch and he starts to wrestle. And this is the way it should be handled. WWE doesn't do that. So just going back to my original point is I don't see anything working in an agreement in this. So I just don't think it's going to happen. It doesn't make sense. And WWE would never agree to or concede to some of the things that they would need to concede to make this happen. So I just see this as, it's just talk. And Nick Khan, who is really high up the chain in WWE, is taking charge of these discussions. And Tony Khan actually had kind of a funny response on the TNT AEW YouTube channel where he had talked about the rumor talks between WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he said that there was room for only one Khan in professional wrestling, and that was him, and he called Nick Khan a con man. So just, why not? Just grab onto it and have fun with it. It's going to get people talking. It's going to attract attention, and that's what this business is all about. But I'm gonna say that I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that nothing is gonna come out of this as far as a relationship with WWE and New Japan, unless WWE gets to that point where they realize, see, they're doing this because they're afraid. They know that when this thing goes full speed and there's all sorts of interpromotional matches and supercards with AEW, New Japan, throw in Impact and Ring of Honor, they're going to be on the very short end of the stick. And they're going to want a piece of that. So there could be that very slim possibility that WWE is willing to go into this on a sensible and fair basis and have their share of losses, make the other organizations look strong, work storylines that build towards bigger storylines. They don't have that kind of foresight right now within their own product. But if they're looking to survive and if they're looking to get their ratings back and improve on their product, then maybe they eventually will. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's just going to be a wait and see basis. We're going to have to watch and see what happens. My confidence level is low that anything will come out of this. AEW, New Japan have a good thing going right now, and I think it's going to benefit New Japan in a big way. So we'll just have to take it day by day, week by week, month by month, and see how this develops and what happens. But this will be the place. If anything breaks, I will certainly be here to let you know about it. In AEW news, of course, this is Double or Nothing weekend. Before I get into the Double or Nothing card and things like that, I do want to talk about something that just broke very shortly before I started this recording. And just forgive me, give me one moment while I get into my news feed here. Apparently, last night on the Dynamite broadcast, when Hikaru Shida was doing her promo and receiving her new championship belt, AEW Spanish announcer Willie Urbina got involved in a sort of a verbal thing in front of a microphone that he didn't realize was recording, and that's no excuse. I mean, if this is a no tolerance situation, especially with Tony Khan. Tony Khan's not going to play around with anything like this, but PWInsider.com confirmed that All Elite Wrestling has released Spanish language announcer Willie Urbina today. The release came hours after audio of Urbina, who was not aware his mic was broadcasting, had mocked Hikaru Shida's accent. He was also caught discussing how he would handle the Spanish translation of Shida's promo for last night's Spanish language broadcast of Dynamite. The audio clip started to circulate on social media, and it drew attention of the fans. The audio clip became a major topic of discussion on Twitter and other social media platforms overnight. Now it seems that Tony Khan had to make the call to release the announcer as racism is intolerable. Now, Urbina has a history of work with Impact. He began his career in the IWA in Puerto Rico and Carlos Colon's World Wrestling Council. He also did some Spanish language announcing for New Japan. So again, this is just on Willie Urbina's part, this is just pure stupidity. You don't, you can say, oh, it happened because he got caught because the mic was live. Aren't we past this? I mean, is this to an adult in a professional surrounding? Is this still considered funny to mock an accent, or a foreign language accent, and I'm not sure what you're going for when you do something like this, but is this really in this kind of environment or any environment? Is this funny? And it comes right down to it. He got what he deserved. He did something completely idiotic, whether it was malicious or not. It was just stupid. And Tony Khan does not play around. Tony Khan is going to live and die preserving the integrity of AEW, and rightfully so. This is his company. With the Elite, he built this thing from the ground up, and he's grown, and he's not going to allow anyone in any capacity at any level to jeopardize the future success of AEW. And good for him. It wouldn't matter if this was Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes. If you're going to do something stupid like this, you can expect to be gone. Sammy Guevara with the Sasha Banks incident last year during the whole Speak Out movement. It could have gone much worse for Guevara. I think that the date of the incident and Guevara's age at the time, and just I think it was really obvious that he was speaking in an extreme, and he was trying to just comment on the attractiveness of Sasha Banks, and what he said was just off color, but not meant to be malicious and not meant to be stalkerish or anything like that. So, his sentence of sensitivity training and whatever else he went through, what I think was completely just. But it could have gone much worse for him. He could have been gone. If it would have happened, it would have not surprised me, because I completely trust Tony Khan to preserve the integrity of AEW, doing whatever he needs to do, firing whoever he needs to fire. I don't see any concession in his stance or his mind if any of this happens. So this should be a lesson to everybody. If you take part in this kind of stupidity, keep it in your private life. Grow up first, because I didn't think mocking accents was really. And I'm not a young guy. I remember years and years and years ago that this was a thing, and even at that time, it wasn't meant to be malicious. It was purely people joking around amongst other people. But we're at a place now where who really thinks this stuff is funny anymore? And it's idiotic, and the punishment was just, and everybody else needs to take a lesson from this and smarten up and just not get involved in this. It's not going to get you anywhere, and it's just pure stupidity. I'm going to leave that at that. If anything else happens on this story, of course, we'll bring you any news, any developments, but I think it's pretty much a done deal, and I don't think AEW should suffer anything because of this one individual's stupidity. It's been dealt with, and it's time we get to a point where, as long as the principals involved deal with the matter at hand, excuse me, I feel like I'm going through puberty again, deal with the matter at hand, then it's time to just drop it and not start pointing fingers and making accusations. Tony Khan dealt with it. Let's leave it alone. Moving on, before I get to the Double or Nothing card, I want to talk about another story here. Actually, a couple of stories. Kenny Omega sat down with Sports Illustrated recently for an interview, and he commented on Will Ospreay and Jay White. He had said that, he had lit a fire. Upon his exiting New Japan Pro Wrestling, he had tried to light a fire under Will Ospreay and Jay White. And his words were quoted as, "It's in their hands to represent at least the Western expansion and pride of the foreigners," because he knew and New Japan Pro Wrestling would look to them to carry it. The interview went, however, from a shoot, as in the sincere, legitimate comments, to what I believe was a work, because Omega went on to say, He proclaimed that Ospreay tried to fill his shoes physically. And although Ospreay is one of the most gifted performers inside the ring right now, there's only one Kenny Omega, and no one can fill those shoes. So again, the talking about inspiring Jay White and Will Ospreay to grab the torch and carry it and keep New Japan elevated and relevant within the Western world, and have those non-Japanese wrestlers represented and strong on the cards. He was leaving it to them because that's what he did. Kenny Omega was absolutely the best in New Japan Pro Wrestling without a doubt, and it was very close. He put on 6-star matches with Kazuchika Okada, absolutely no doubt. And I don't think there's anybody with a wrestling acumen, with any intelligence, that could say that those matches did not exceed what you've seen anywhere in the history of pro wrestling. There may be other things that you could pick out historically that could possibly be considered on par, but these guys took these matches to a completely different level, something that I've never personally seen before. If I miss something along the lines in my well in excess of 40 years of watching wrestling, then I missed it. But they did something completely magical when they were in the ring together, and Kenny Omega proved that his nicknames of the Cleaner and the Best Bout Machine and the Terminator were all just perfectly applied to him, because he earned those nicknames, and he lived them and died by them, and did everything that he needed to do to make sure his legacy was intact when he left New Japan. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Will Ospreay. Some CAT scan films or X-rays, I'm not sure which of the two, had leaked online. Not leaked, Ospreay himself actually posted it on his Twitter account, but it showed the extent of his neck injury, and it's pretty severe. And I'm sure he'll recover. I'm sure he'll be back. I have no doubt about that. But I'm very curious to see if this kind of monologue from Kenny Omega is meant to maybe start the kindling of the fire of something in the future between him and Ospreay. Because if you got Will Ospreay in an AEW ring against Kenny Omega, or vice versa, if Kenny went back to Japan and wrestled the match with Ospreay at the Tokyo Dome, this is something that every wrestling fan in the world would need to see, because these two guys would do exactly what Omega and Okada did. They would take things to a completely different level, light this up like you wouldn't believe. And I would be one of the first ones in line to want to see this, and it would be a dream match for sure. Whether or not it happens, we'll just have to wait and see. But God, if there's a chance that it can happen, I really hope it does. So many dream matches between the AEW roster and the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster that I would love to see. I could spend days fantasy booking this, but this right here, this is a match that would be right at the top. Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, Kenny Omega, Kazuchika Okada again. That's just a small fraction of the matches that you could put together between these two rosters. And I use specifically Kenny Omega here because he is the AEW champion. And when these two groups do get together for some sort of major supercard, providing Omega is still wearing the title in AEW, that's going to be the premier match. And everybody's going to be wondering which talent from New Japan is going to be facing for that. And I think the two front runners, honestly, are Ospreay and Kota Ibushi. Ospreay just having to surrender his title and being the world champion, his status at that point makes him one of the front runners. And Kenny Omega's history with Kota Ibushi, they were inseparable when Kenny Omega was in New Japan. They were a tag team, they were best friends, and I think that just the world would love to see that matchup. And Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega did already wrestle in New Japan, and they had some amazing classics, some instant classics. If you have access to the New Japan streaming service, I highly recommend looking up and finding the matches between Ibushi and Omega. I will not be disappointed. Also in AEW, just want to talk briefly about the Dynamite episode from last night. You know, I don't go into detailed reviews and things like that, but I just do want to point out highlights. I thought this was a phenomenal go-home show going into Double or Nothing. All the matches were just absolutely spectacular, and I give them all extremely high marks. I thought that, you know, the Dark Order against Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, I thought Stu Grayson and Evil Uno have proved again why they are such an incredible tag team, and they have been since day one. You know, when the Dark Order launched, there was so much negativity about the type of faction that they were. And, you know, I'll complete honesty, complete transparency, even though I immediately had high marks for Uno and Stu Grayson, I wasn't crazy about the whole gimp thing with all the masked gimps that they had following them to the ring and making the human chair for Uno. I can't say it was done in a completely tasteless way or anything like that. I just didn't like the vibe that it put off, and it wasn't for me. But I still completely supported the Dark Order because the actual wrestlers that were involved were very talented. Uno and Grayson have been a tag team for like 15 years, and they've got incredible chemistry. Grayson is a black belt in several different forms of martial arts, and he's just so skilled and agile and powerful in the ring. And Uno, for a guy his size, and he's trimmed down quite a bit since he came into AEW, but regardless, he's always been, for a guy of his size, extremely agile and extremely capable. So high marks to them for last night. The Miro match with Dante Martin. Miro is continuing this absolute beast look that he's finally been given in AEW, and I can't wait for the match with him and Lance Archer at Double or Nothing. Archer came into the ring after the match with Dante Martin, and they had a little exchange, and both guys, they look like they're going to tear the house down on Sunday night. This is going to be an absolute hoss fight. It's going to be a beast mode fight, and I'm completely looking forward to it. The interaction with Hangman Page and Brian Cage last night. Page had a match with Joey Janela, and you know what? I don't expect much when Joey Janela comes into a match, but there's a great chemistry between him and Hangman Page, and this is, with every other match that was on last night, was just spectacular. Page got busted open pretty bad. He was just gushing blood from the hairline. I'm not sure what he hit or what caused the laceration that caused the bleeding, but Hangman Page, of course, got the win with the buckshot lariat. And after the match was over and Janela had left the ring, Taz from the announcer's table started an interaction with Hangman Page, talking about his match with Brian Cage at Double or Nothing. Said that Brian Cage was coming to the ring, which he did. Cage was getting in Hangman's face a little bit, and Hangman cut him off at the microphone and said, "Look, we all know how this is going to go. Hook's going to come out. All the members of Team Taz are going to come out," and he basically just challenged Brian Cage to face him one-on-one and leave the stable at home. You know, Ricky Starks, Hook, Will Hobbs. He called them all by name and just basically asked Brian Cage if he was afraid to face him on his own without his clique behind him. And Cage manned up and got in his face and said that at Double or Nothing it was going to be one-on-one. And we'll just have to see how Taz reacts to this, because we all know Taz is going to want to keep the cards stacked in their favor. But I think this is going to be a continuation of what we saw earlier on with Brian Cage giving respect to Sting and having a little bit of heat with Ricky Starks. They had some matches where Starks was being obviously sarcastic and prickish about how he was handling tagging in and out and who was getting the pin with Brian Cage. So just everything on last night's Dynamite, with the exception of the weigh-in. Can't say that I was overly entertained by the weigh-in, and to be completely honest, I never really am. you know, things like weigh-ins and contract signings, things like that, they've gotten kind of stale. AEW does them a little bit differently, whereas they're not as predictable as what you see in other wrestling shows. So I give them a little bit of a leg up, but still, the bottom line, it's not my favorite part of the show. But that being the only thing, and another thing that I don't know if anybody else watched AEW felt this, it just felt last night like the commercial content was just absolutely out of control. It just seemed like there was so many commercials, like picture-in-picture breaks and matches, halfway through matches, right at the end of matches, more commercials. It seemed like every segment there was something. It just felt like so much more than on a traditional Wednesday night. And I don't know if it was because it was a Friday, because of the later hour. I'm not sure, but if I'm wrong, if maybe it tweaked me a little bit without realizing that it wasn't any different than a normal Wednesday. I'm not sure. It just felt that way to me. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't know. It just seemed a little bit out of control, crazy. But the biggest takeaway Dynamite for me was the crowd. Daly's place was full. The cameras were back to not being that fixed hard camera. They had the roaming cameras. They had crowd shots. They had various angles in the ring. It was spectacular. I got just chills and goosebumps seeing that live crowd again, the stands being full, nobody wearing the mask. And you know what? There's different opinions on this, but for me, hats off to Florida, hats off to Texas for leading these charges, because they've been doing this for a while now. They've lifted their restrictions, they've gone maskless, and you know what? Their stats are fine. They haven't had any major outbreaks. It hasn't gotten out of control. They've proved that we can get back to normal life. And sure, some people are still going to get sick, but you know what? Some people are still going to get sick if we continue to wear these masks and continue the distancing and continued all the other life-sucking restrictions that have been placed on us by the CDC and the government. It's time to be normal again. And, you know, I'm in New York. I'm on the very short end of the stick here with a governor that can't seem to tell his ass from a hole in the ground. And we're just getting to that point where we just had the mandate of masks was lifted as long as you're vaccinated. However, individual businesses still have the right to say you need to wear a mask to come in. And you know, it's getting closer to normal though. You know, bars and restaurants are back to being open to however long they were open before. You know, a lot of places in Buffalo, New York, where I'm from, there's a 4 a.m. cutoff for a lot of places. Some places choose to close at 2. That was reduced to, I believe, 10 o'clock at one point. Then there was a court case filed where the restaurant owners were losing businesses and going out of business because the governor, frankly, doesn't care about who lives, who dies, who loses their livelihood. And, you know, it got changed back to 11 for a while. Then a judge that was in the governor's pocket switched it back. And I'm digressing here, and I don't want to go too far into this because I could make hours and hours on this subject just alone. But the crowd, to see that finally, that live crowd, that full house at Daly's place was spectacular. And I'm looking forward to AEW getting back on the road. I had tickets for last year's show where Brody Lee was supposed to premiere in Rochester, New York. Not only did I not get to see that, but tragically, Brody lost his life, and now I'll never get to see him live. But that date has been bumped a couple times. Right now it's been moved to September, and as far as I know, that's still a good date, and hopefully it doesn't change because I'm looking forward to being back in an AEW crowd. I had the unbelievable honor and pleasure of being in the crowd for their very first show, the very first Double or Nothing at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, and I'm looking forward to getting back in that crowd because this is the way wrestling fans are supposed to be at a crowd. Come as you are, wear whatever t-shirt you want, chant whatever you want. It's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm very happy to get back into it. Now I'm going to go quickly over the Double or Nothing card for Sunday night. And let's start at the main event. of course, the three-way match between Kenny Omega, the reigning AEW champion, versus Pac, excuse me. Keep doing that. I can't get used to Pac constantly changing his name. And Orange Cassidy. They're calling this a three-way match. Traditionally, I call it a triple threat. I don't know if WWE somehow has a trademark on that title, but it doesn't seem to be what AEW calls it. But just, three incredible performers in the ring. We all know what Kenny Omega and Pac can do when they're in the ring together. And we all know what Pac and Orange Cassidy can do, because they've had a match or two in the past, and Orange Cassidy proves that he belongs in this group. So I think Kenny Omega retains without a shadow of a doubt, but just going to be a great match. Then we got the Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle in the Stadium Stampede. They did great things in the Blood and Guts match, and looking forward to another solid outing. And this, of course, is the Stadium Stampede, which we had once before between the Inner Circle and the Elite. This time the Pinnacle is going to be taking the Elite's place, and the stipulation here is if the Inner Circle loses, they have to disband. Don't really care too much for these stipulation matches. Loser leaves town, this, that, and the other thing. Can't contend for a belt. AEW's done a lot of this since their inception. I think maybe they're relying on it a little too heavy. If I was to make a criticism, that would probably be one of them. You had Cody losing his opportunity to ever contend for a world title. You had this. You had, the breakup of SoCal Uncensored. I just think it's a little much. I don't think they need to do the stipulation matches like that much, but this, of course, is two absolutely solid groups stacked with great wrestlers. So at the end of the day, I just expect a phenomenal match. As far as a winner, I think I'm going to take the Inner Circle. I don't want to see this going back and forth with nobody getting the upper hand, because I do think that at the end of the day, the Pinnacle is the future as far as the factions in this organization. But as of right now, I think the Inner Circle should probably take this one. You've got the AEW Tag Team Championship match. The champions, the Young Bucks versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And I got to say, I'm expecting an absolute barn burner of a match. And if I'm going to pick a winner, I think I'm going with Moxley and Kingston. The Young Bucks haven't had the tag team titles that long, but they are a team that this isn't going to be the only time they hold the titles. This is the Bucks are going to be back and forth with this, and I think that they're going to pass the belts on to Moxley and Kingston for now, because I think they're just an absolutely dynamic team, and their interaction with the Elite and the Young Bucks has been spectacular so far. So I'm going to give the edge to them, and we're going to see where it goes from there. Then we got Adam Page and Brian Cage, and I talked about this briefly during the talking about Dynamite. If this is going to be a strictly one-on-one match, and with what's going on between Adam Page and Brian Cage, and Cage possibly having some animosity within Team Taz, I'm going to pick Adam Page on this one. I think a couple things are going to happen after this match. I think Adam Page takes the FTW belt, and I think that causes the rift between Brian Cage and Team Taz, driving him out of Team Taz, or if not completely driving him out, making him the redheaded stepchild within the group. He lost Taz's belt. He was arrogant, and he kept Team Taz away from the ring when Taz wanted him there. I think there's a lot of play in this one, and a lot of different ways this can go, but I'm going to pick Adam Page winning this match. Then we have Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky versus Darby Allin and Sting. And, Page and Sky are definitely a solid tag team. I like both of these guys as individual wrestlers, but, man, I'll tell you what, as much pound for pound, I think Scorpio Sky is one of the most talented wrestlers in the AEW roster. And Ethan Page is phenomenal on his own part. but I just feel like both of these guys is lacking some sort of it factor that makes them a top tier superstar as an individual. So I think putting them in a tag team was a great idea. I think it showcases both their talents, and really them together. I've been fine with their whole characters and the way they play off each other. I think it's been great. I am going to pick. They're going to be wrestling Ethan Page, or I'm sorry, Darby Allin and Sting. And I think I'm going to go with Scorpio Sky and Sting. I think Sting, the legend, and Darby Allin, just the former TNT champion, are going to help to put these guys over a little bit farther, give them a little bit more status within the company and on the roster. And we'll just have, I mean, this one literally could go either way. I don't think there's a wrong answer in who wins and who loses. But if I'm going to make a pick, I'm going to say Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. Then we've got the Women's Championship, Hikaru Shida versus Dr. Britt Baker. And last night on Dynamite, of course, Shida celebrated her 1-year anniversary as Women's Champion. She was given a new women's title belt, which I think looks so much better than the original one. The first one was just felt way too small and way too unimportant. But the new belt looks great. But as far as the winner in this match, you got to go with Britt Baker. She was originally, from day one, supposed to be the face of this division in this company. And because of the problems within the women's division, there was a lack of talent. Britt Baker was certainly not ready to be given the mantle of face of the division at that time. She had a long way to go, and she has progressed, and she has improved to the point where I think she can take this thing. And again, this is going to be a wait and see thing, but I think it's going to be Britt Baker. I think she finally takes that. I think she finally takes that throne as champion and face of the women's division. And then we got the Battle Royale. And the participants right now are Griff Garrison, Brian Pillman Jr., Preston Vance, 10 from the Dark Order, Stu Grayson from the Dark Order, Nick Camarado from the faction, QT Marshall's faction, QT Marshall, Lee Johnson from the Nightmare Family, Dustin Rhodes from the Nightmare Family, Anthony Bowens from the Acclaimed, Max Caster from the Acclaimed, Penta El Zaromero from the Death Triangle, Isaiah Cassidy from Private Party, Mark Quinn from Private Party, Matt Seidel, Christian Cage, Matt Hardy, Powerhouse Hobbs from Team Taz, Evil Uno from the Dark Order, Colt Cabana from the Dark Order, Jungle Boy, and also a mystery entrant. And here we go with the mystery entrant. These things I love. I love being surprised. I can't say I've ever been disappointed by any of the surprises that AEW has put forward. There was a lot of mixed reactions to the Christian Cage debut. People felt like Tony Khan overpromised and underdelivered on that one, but I can't really say that's a fact. So, in my opinion, I think there's 3 ways that this can go. And if I was to guess who was going to be the mystery entrant for this Casino Battle Royal, again, I have 3 people that I would put my money on, and I think I can narrow it down to possibly 1, but I think it's very close. First one's could be Andrade, and Andrade is. He's scheduled to have a AAA title match with Kenny Omega already. So he could easily slip right into this spot and, be this mystery entrant. I'm looking forward to Andrade. I think he will be a part of AEW, and I think he's going to be a big, important part of AEW. My second guess is, and I don't know that there's any contract restrictions because this person could be still within a 90-day no-compete clause after being released by the WWE. But my second guess would be Samoa Joe. And I think he may still be under a no-compete clause. So I think of my 3 picks, I think he's probably the guy that it's not going to happen. And then finally, I think the big name that you can't overlook, and it could definitely would be Daniel Bryan. He has no compete clause. He's officially done with the WWE right now. His status is still unknown. I think that if he was re-signing with the WWE, I think it'd be shouted out right now. So, not if you're the WWE and you've got Daniel Bryan locked in, you're going to sign him to a new contract. There's no question about it. Do you not make that fact public and let people think that there's a chance that Daniel Bryan could show up at Double or Nothing and increase their pay-per-view buys and increase eyes on their product and possibly drive more fans to a great wrestling product? I think it would be crazy on WWE's part to allow that to happen. So I'm going to say there's a chance that it could be Daniel Bryan. Also, the TNT Championship, we've got Miro versus Lance Archer. And I'm expecting a huge battle, beast battle again. And this is going to be probably one of the best matches of the night. I just can't see Miro losing this title yet. I want to see gold on Lance Archer at some point because he has all the tools. He has the look. He has the ability. He has the wrestling skill. And there's no reason why he should not be a champion at some point. I just think it's way too soon to take the belt off of Miro, and they need to keep driving this beast character. Then we got Cody Rhodes versus Anthony Gogo, and this is probably the match that I'm least interested in. Not that I'm disinterested at all. I just, you haven't really seen yet what Anthony Gogo can do. So his big thing to date has been throwing that punch and putting people down with the punch, but you haven't really seen much of a complete wrestling skill on his part. So it's hard to get fired up not knowing what you're really going to get from this guy. But if I'm going to pick a winner, I'm going to say Cody Rhodes is probably going to put over Anthony Gogo. I think Cody Rhodes comes up on the short end in this one. And that's pretty much it. We had a match added to the pre-show, a dark match with Serena Deeb facing Riho for the NWA World Championship or Women's Champion. Not much exciting there. Again, I find it hard to get into women's wrestling, and Riho is probably one of the better Japanese wrestlers that have come through the AEW system, and Serena Deeb has definitely got talent. She spent some time with WWE, and she defeated Thunder Rosa for the NWA Championship. So, it could be a good match, and I'm not expecting much, to be honest. I don't mean to be a downer on this one, but it's a dark match for a reason. So I am going to cut it short right there. Again, this was episode number 10, and as always, thank you so much for joining me. It's so much appreciated. I am going to start marketing this channel a little bit stronger to try and drum up some more subscribers. I kept it, quiet and light and just doing this to do this, giving myself a chance to get a little stronger on the microphone. I think I've improved from the beginning. I think I was nervous at the beginning and not really sure how to handle this. And you get to the point where you put yourself out in front of the public and you start to question your own opinions because you don't know how you're going to interact with anybody or what's going to be the reaction to what you're saying. So you try to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more politically correct. But I think I've opened up over the course of these 10 episodes and finally become a little bit more of myself, gotten more comfortable in front of the microphone. So I think it's time to start putting this out there a little bit more. And, I was going to wait until I got a professional logo done because my Scnn logo, I just did it myself quickly on a logo maker on Android just so I could get something to put in that spot. But I'm having a little trouble finding the right person to do a logo for me. So I think I'm not going to wait anymore on that. I'm just going to put out what I have and change as I need to and evolve as I need to as I go along here. But I appreciate everybody that clicks on this video. I appreciate subscribers. I appreciate likes. Again, if you want to talk about anything that I've had to say, if you want to comment, please feel free to leave a comment. As always, the only thing I ask is that you keep it respectful, keep it civil. Let's talk. Let's not shout at each other. Let's not make it ugly. Thank you so much again for being here. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Click on that thumbs up for a like. Leave me a comment and click on that little bell icon so that you will be notified every single time I upload new content. For the end of episode 10 on May 29th, 2021, thank you again for being here. And as always, be good to yourself and be good to each other. Thank you.